Sage Wanderer here, and welcome to Coffee Talk! Alright, so today we're talking about giants. Run for your life! There's giants loose and they're coming to get us, oh my gosh! So, you probably don't have internet access if you haven't at least once clicked on one of those clickbait pictures that shows this enormous skeleton of a giant that's like 60 feet tall. And there's these little humans in there. They're like, it's not even as big as his rib bone. Yeah. You've seen that, right? And there's this idea that we have been finding skeletal remains of giants in North America really since the very beginning of white men showing up here on this continent. And that the Smithsonian Institute has been hoarding them and hiding them or maybe destroying them because it messes with Darwin's theory of evolution and the timeline of the Earth and the paleo theories of the dinosaurs and all of this. And then there's the ancient stories of giants. Those of us who grew up in Sunday school have heard the story of David and Goliath, and how little David stood up to the giant Goliath. Those giants from those tales were rumored to have 6 fingers and multiple rows of teeth. And I'll tell you another thing about giants. Everyone who knows history and stories knows that giants are cannibals. Well, they eat human beings anyway. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. I'll grind his bones to make my bread. Do, do, do. And then you've got the story of the Nephalim, the demigods, the story of how the sons of God came down and saw the daughters of men and found them beautiful, and their son, and they had children, and the offspring thereof were giants. The Bible says, and there were giants in the land in those days. That there's the story that there was this group of extraterrestrials, I think there was 400 of them, that descended from space when their spacecraft malfunctioned and they crash landed on Earth, and they ruled as gods over us, as seen in the pantheon of gods in the Greek stories. And that gods like Apollo and Zeus gave birth to monsters, or sired monsters rather, when they mated with human women. And that you had this time, maybe it was the time of Atlantis, where all of these giants ruled the world until they were destroyed in a flood. Interesting stuff, man. You gotta love the giants story. What little kid didn't listen to Jack and the Beanstalk and go, ooh, big scary giant? How big were they, Hang on. Coffee break. Take a sip. So Goliath, I don't know, I'm just going off memory here, I didn't make any notes for this. I've been kind of a student of and a studier of giant myth for a long, long time. But I'm thinking Goliath was like 14 feet tall, something like that. About the size of a giant Bigfoot. Don't. But then, you've got these stories of really, really big giants, like 70, 80 foot tall giants. And there's this new theory that maybe you've seen or you haven't seen. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But you know what a butte is, or a mesa? A butte or a mesa, if you've lived in desert areas, eastern Oregon and southern Oregon have them. And you see them in Utah and New Mexico and places like that. But it's where the land rises up like this to a squared off flat butte. And if you look at those, and just go look, and you'll find this theory online on the YouTube. But they look like a tree stump. They look like this giant tree stump. They have grains that look like the grains of wood in petrified wood. When you look at the top of some of them, they look like they have circles. They really resemble giant, enormous trees. These trees would have had to go into the stratosphere. And this goes in line with what Dr. Carl Baugh taught, that before the flood, there was a water canopy around the earth that made it double the barometric pressure and 90% humidity all the time. So it was just like this primordial kind of fogginess. And the sun never shined, and there was no rain, there was no weather, there was no wind. And these trees could get enormous. They get huge. You know, Dr. Carl Bob, he grew a 20-foot tall tomato plant with tomatoes on it the size of beach balls, you know, giant pumpkin-sized tomatoes in this environment of double the barometric pressure and high humidity. That's kind of what Earth was, that everything was huge. And that, you know, when you look at these giant tree stumps, they look like they were sawed off with a crosscut saw, or, you know, some of them look like they were broken off in a storm, and they're ragged and on top. And I know it boggles the mind to think, because if those were sawed down, think of the size of the guy that sawed them down. Woo! Are these people from other planets enormous? Really? I mean, were the sons of God, were these angels, like, huge? You know, there's this really cryptic verse in the Bible that always made me think of this enormous angel. And it says in the Bible that this angel put 1 foot on the land and 1 foot on the sea, and time was no more. Wow, that's big. You could stop the earth. Stop the earth. Just, stop. So, how big were they? It makes you a little more scared to go fight them. You know, suddenly your gun doesn't seem like that big a deal when you're looking at something that's 80 feet tall. Wow. But there you go. Giants on Coffee Talk. What else can I say? I mean, do you think they're real? Do you believe those pictures, or are they doctored? Is the Smithsonian hiding real giants? I am convinced that human beings typically could range from anywhere from 4 feet tall, 3 feet tall, even 2 feet tall. I mean, we have small people now, all the way up to, 14, 16 feet tall. But those 90-foot giants, that big a giant like you see in the fairy tale of Jack and the Beanstalk, that's just, so huge they can grab you up in their hand and, bite your head off, King Kong-sized giants. Man, I don't know how I feel about that. I think there's less evidence for that than there is for the giants, like the one that they claimed they found sleeping in a cave in Kandahar. And in Afghanistan, they encountered this person, and this Nordic-looking god in battle uniforms asleep in a stasis chamber. That's another thing, the stasis. I'm going to back in there. Wait, I was almost leaving. I want to talk about the stasis chamber, because you can't go there unless you talk about the ancient aliens kind of spin on this, that they put themselves in suspended animation, some of them, to protect themselves from the flood. That God flooded the earth to get rid of these Nephalim, these giants, these red-headed giants, and some of them put themselves in suspended animation, and that they found some of these now, like in Kandahar, and they woke one of these things up, and it commenced to chopping them up like cordwood, and their weapons were useless against it, and finally, after really just getting serious and laying so much lead into this thing, they finally could drop it, and they lost a bunch of people. It's a story. Go check it out. I don't know if it's true. It's on the internet. Like I said in a previous video, just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's real. But check it out. It's very interesting, and it goes in line with all these other things. Stories in Patagonia of Native Americans who lived there and knew Indians. Knew giants. Explorers who say they encountered 12-foot tall red-headed giants. I mean, this giant conspiracy is a giant conspiracy. Yeah, pun intended. But yeah, it's kind of creepy. I'm glad there's no giants around. My kid, which you've seen him in my fishing videos with me, I think he's 6'4". I think if he stood up straight, he's 6'5". He wears a men's 15 shoe. So, he proved to me that Bigfoot exists. All right, till next time on Coffee Talk.